The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, emerged from the ashes of World War II. The devastation left behind by the war was immense, and Europe was in desperate need of stability and security. The formation of NATO was a pivotal moment in history, marking the beginning of a new era of collective defense and cooperation among Western nations. It was 1949, and the world was grappling with the Cold War. The ideological battle between the Western democracies and the Eastern Bloc, led by the Soviet Union, was intensifying. The fear of communist expansion was palpable, and the need for a united front became increasingly clear. The Soviet Union loomed large, its shadow stretching across Europe. NATO offered a counterweight, a promise of mutual defense and a deterrent against Soviet aggression. The alliance was not just a military pact, but a symbol of unity and shared values among its member states. It was a defensive alliance, and its core principle was that an attack on one is an attack on all. This principle, enshrined in Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty, was a powerful statement of solidarity and collective security. It reassured member nations that they would not stand alone in the face of aggression. This collective defense pact was anchored by the United States. The US played a crucial role in the formation and leadership of NATO, providing military and economic support to its European allies. President Truman and other American leaders were instrumental in shaping the alliance's early policies and strategies. It provided a security umbrella for war-torn Europe. The Marshall Plan, alongside NATO, helped to rebuild European economies and infrastructure, fostering a sense of stability and hope for the future. The alliance was a cornerstone of the post-war recovery and a bulwark against the spread of communism. The early years of NATO were marked by tension. The Cold War was in full swing, and the threat of conflict was ever present. NATO's member states had to navigate a complex geopolitical landscape, balancing the need for defense with the desire for peace. The Berlin blockade and the Korean War underscored the Soviet threat. These events highlighted the importance of a strong and united NATO, capable of responding to crises and deterring aggression. The alliance's resolve was tested, and it proved its worth as a stabilizing force in a turbulent world. NATO expanded, bringing in West Germany in 1955. This was a significant milestone as it marked the integration of a former adversary into the Western alliance. West Germany's membership strengthened NATO's position in Europe and demonstrated the alliance's commitment to reconciliation and unity. This move solidified the alliance's role as a bulwark against Soviet expansionism. NATO's military capabilities were enhanced, and its strategic position was reinforced. The alliance continued to grow, adapting to new challenges and maintaining its relevance in a changing world. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 brought a new era. The end of the Cold War was a momentous event, reshaping the global political landscape. NATO faced the challenge of redefining its purpose and mission in a world no longer dominated by the East-West divide. NATO faced a strategic crossroads. The alliance had to adapt to a new security environment, addressing emerging threats and redefining its role in the post-Cold War world. This period of transition was marked by introspection and innovation as NATO sought to remain relevant and effective. It adapted and shifted its focus to address new challenges. NATO's mission evolved to include peacekeeping, crisis management, and cooperative security. The alliance took on new roles, working to promote stability and security beyond its traditional borders. These included ethnic conflicts in the Balkans, the rise of terrorism, and the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. NATO's ability to respond to these diverse threats demonstrated its flexibility and resilience, and the resurgence of Russia. The alliance continues to face complex challenges, but its commitment to collective defense and shared values remains unwavering. NATO's journey, from its origins to the present day, is a testament to the enduring power of cooperation and unity in the face of adversity.
The United States has been central to NATO since its inception. From the very beginning, the U.S. played a pivotal role in the formation of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, ensuring a collective defense mechanism that would stand the test of time. It is the largest financial and military contributor to the alliance. The U.S. allocates a significant portion of its defense budget to support NATO operations, providing advanced military technology and extensive training programs for allied forces. It provides strategic leadership, and the U.S. commitment to NATO is unwavering. American generals and military leaders often take the lead in NATO's strategic planning sessions, ensuring that the alliance remains prepared for any potential threats. This commitment underpins the alliance's credibility. The presence of the US in NATO not only boosts the morale of member nations, but also sends a strong message to adversaries about the unity and strength of the alliance. The US military presence in Europe is substantial, with numerous bases spread across the continent. From Germany to Poland, the US ensures that it can rapidly deploy forces if needed. It includes troops, bases, and equipment. This extensive network of resources allows for seamless coordination during joint exercises and real-world operations. This presence reassures allies and deters potential adversaries. The visible commitment of American forces in Europe acts as a deterrent to those who might consider challenging NATO's resolve. It enables NATO to respond swiftly to crises. Whether it's a natural disaster, a political upheaval, or a military threat, the combined strength of NATO, bolstered by US capabilities, ensures a rapid and effective response. The US also plays a leading role in shaping NATO's strategic direction. Through continuous dialogue and collaboration, American leaders help steer the alliance towards addressing emerging global challenges. It advocates for a strong stance against Russian aggression and supports NATO's efforts to counter terrorism and cyber threats. The US pushes for robust measures to counteract any destabilizing actions from adversaries, ensuring the safety and security of member nations. The US is a vocal proponent of NATO enlargement, seeking to bring more countries under the alliance's security umbrella. By advocating for the inclusion of new members, the US aims to expand the reach and influence of NATO, promoting stability in more regions. The US commitment to NATO is not without its critics. Some argue that the financial and military resources dedicated to NATO could be better spent on domestic issues. Some argue that it is a drain on American resources, while others believe that it entangles the US in unnecessary conflicts. These debates highlight the ongoing discussion about the balance between national interests and global responsibilities. However, the US government remains steadfast in its support for NATO, viewing the alliance as vital to US national interests. The enduring partnership between the US and NATO continues to be a cornerstone of global security, reflecting a shared commitment to peace and stability.
A US withdrawal from NATO would be a seismic event. It would have profound implications for the transatlantic alliance and the global security order. The very foundations of NATO would be shaken. Without the United States, NATO's military capabilities would be significantly diminished. The US provides critical military assets that other allies lack. These include strategic bombers, nuclear weapons, and advanced intelligence capabilities. The loss of US leadership would also create a void within NATO. The US has traditionally played a key role in coordinating NATO's strategy and operations. Without the US, NATO would struggle to maintain unity and cohesion. A US withdrawal from NATO would likely embolden Russia. Moscow has long sought to weaken the alliance and divide the West. A weakened NATO would be less able to deter Russian aggression in Eastern Europe.
A US departure from NATO would send shockwaves through European capitals. Allies would question the US commitment to European security. They would worry about their own vulnerability. Germany, France, and the United Kingdom would feel the pressure most acutely. They would need to reassess their defense postures and consider increased military spending. They might even contemplate developing their own nuclear deterrence. Smaller NATO states, particularly those bordering Russia, would be deeply concerned. They rely heavily on US security guarantees. Without the US, they would feel exposed to Russian pressure. The Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, would be particularly vulnerable. They have small militaries and share borders with Russia. They would likely seek closer security ties with other European countries. They might even consider joining a non-NATO alliance.
A world adrift, global security in uncharted waters. In today's interconnected world, the stability of one region often has ripple effects across the globe. The consequences of a US withdrawal from NATO would extend far beyond Europe. Such a move would not only shake the foundations of the transatlantic alliance, but also send shockwaves through global security structures. It would undermine global security, creating a vacuum that could be exploited by adversarial forces. The United Nations, already grappling with numerous challenges, would find it even harder to maintain peace and stability. It would embolden authoritarian regimes, giving them the confidence to pursue aggressive policies without fear of collective Western retaliation. Leaders in these countries might see this as a green light to expand their influence and suppress dissent more harshly. It would create a more uncertain and dangerous world. Conflicts could escalate unchecked, and protests could turn more violent as the balance of power shifts unpredictably. The rules-based international order, already under strain, would be further weakened. International norms and agreements that have kept relative peace for decades could be disregarded, leading to a breakdown in diplomatic relations. Countries would be more likely to resort to military force to resolve disputes. Without the deterrent of a unified NATO, regional skirmishes could escalate into full-blown wars. They would be less likely to cooperate on global challenges like climate change and pandemics. The absence of a strong united front would make it harder to tackle these pressing issues effectively. China would see a US withdrawal from NATO as an opportunity to assert its influence. It might increase its military presence in contested areas, further destabilizing regions like the South China Sea. It might step up its military activities in the Asia-Pacific region, challenging the existing power dynamics and potentially leading to confrontations with neighboring countries. It might try to exploit divisions within the West, using propaganda and cyber tactics to sow discord and weaken alliances. This could lead to a fragmented and less effective response to global threats. The Middle East would become even more volatile. Power vacuums could emerge, leading to increased conflict and instability in an already tumultuous region. Iran might be emboldened to pursue its nuclear ambitions. Without the threat of a coordinated Western response, it could accelerate its nuclear program, raising the stakes for regional and global security. Terrorist groups like ISIS might see an opportunity to regroup and launch new attacks. The lack of a unified front against terrorism could give these groups the breathing room they need to rebuild and strike again.
The price of isolation. Economic impacts on the U.S. The economic implications of a U.S. withdrawal from NATO are complex and far-reaching. Some argue that it would free up resources for domestic priorities. Others contend that it would harm the U.S. economy. The U.S. would likely face pressure to increase its military spending. This would put a strain on the federal budget at a time of rising deficits and debt. It could lead to cuts in other government programs. U.S. businesses would face increased uncertainty and risk. Global trade and investment might decline. This could lead to job losses and slower economic growth. The U.S. dollar's role as the world's reserve currency could be threatened. This would give other countries, like China, more leverage over the global financial system.
A spectrum of opinions debating the consequences. The potential consequences of a U.S. withdrawal from NATO are hotly debated. Experts and policymakers offer a range of perspectives. Some believe that a U.S. withdrawal would be disastrous. They argue that it would embolden Russia, undermine global security, and harm the U.S. economy. They believe that the U.S. must remain committed to NATO to deter aggression and maintain stability. Others contend that the U.S. should reduce its role in NATO. They argue that the alliance is outdated and that European countries should take on more responsibility for their defense. They believe that the U.S. should focus on its own national interests. Still others believe that the U.S. should withdraw from NATO altogether. They argue that the alliance is more trouble than it is worth. They believe that the U.S. should pursue a more isolationist foreign policy.
The future of the West. Charting a course in uncertain times, the future of NATO and the transatlantic alliance hangs in the balance. The US faces a choice. It can reaffirm its commitment to NATO and work to strengthen the alliance, or it can choose a different path. It can reduce its role in NATO. It can withdraw completely. The stakes are high. The decisions made today will shape the security landscape for generations to come. A strong and united NATO is essential to deterring aggression, maintaining stability, and promoting democratic values. The US must weigh the costs and benefits of its involvement in NATO carefully. It must consider the views of its allies. It must chart a course that advances US interests and preserves peace and security.